Tonight, a billionaire's comments on immigration touch a nerve. Sir Jim Ratcliffe offers an apology for suggesting that the UK has been colonised by immigrants, setting off a storm of criticism.
What Jim Ratcliffe said was unacceptable. It was disgusting, frankly.
But not all leading figures across British politics disagree with him. Also on the programme, President Donald Trump raises a scientific finding that fossil fuel emissions threaten human life by warming the planet.
That's all dead, gone, over. These crippling restrictions were a major factor in driving up car prices to unprecedented levels.
The cameras hidden by Jeffrey Epstein that appear to back victims' fears that they were being secretly recorded. High emotion in the Italian Alps after a Ukrainian is banned from competing because of his helmet, honouring athletes killed since Russia's invasion.
I'm speaking to him as an athlete. We have these rules in place to try and be fair.
Ballots are counted in elections that Bangladesh hopes will lead it into a new era after the Gen Z-driven uprising. And we meet the Russian school teacher whose story of small yet brave acts of resistance have made him an Oscar nominee. Good evening. It was around this time last night that news broke on this programme of the Prime Minister's reaction to Sir Jim Ratcliffe's remarks on immigration. Keir Starmer said it was offensive and wrong for one of Britain's richest men to tell Sky News that migrants had colonised the UK. Since then, facing a wave of criticism, Mr Ratcliffe has issued a limited apology for his choice of language, though one political leader doesn't think the key word in his language was wrong.
The use of the word colonisation, that's what he's withdrawn.
Do you think that's offensive?
I think it's probably, in the dictionary definition, correct.
Well, immigration is never far from the spotlight, but this row has drawn a new focus to an issue that dominates politics on both sides of the Atlantic and beyond. But there is an irony in Jim Ratcliffe's intervention, given business empires like his rely on global supply chains and migrant labour. Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, reports.
He became very unpopular for a while.
Billionaire tycoon and Manchester United chief Sir Jim Ratcliffe was in Antwerp to talk about the seemingly uncontentious subject of the chemical industry. But it was his incendiary comments on immigration in a Sky News interview that sparked an explosive reaction from politicians, including Sir Keir Starmer.
You can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause...
It's been colonised?
It'll cause... Well, yeah. The UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it?
To senior Labour figures, Sir Jim's comments sounded like the language of Reform UK. And Reform UK's leader, Nigel Farage, who Sir Jim said he'd met recently, told Sky News he rejects the criticism, though the word colonisation was not ideal.
Was Jim Ratcliffe right to apologise for his comments?
No, he apologised for the use of one word.
Colonisation.
Yeah, he didn't apologise for his comments. So what did he say? He said 12 million people have come to the country in the last few years. Fact. Now, the use of the word colonisation, that's what he's withdrawn.
Do you think that's offensive?
I think it's probably, in the dictionary definition, correct, but perhaps people aren't quite ready for it.
I mean, it has historical overtones, doesn't it?
It does.
In his apology, Sir Jim, who founded the Ineos Chemicals Group, said, "I'm sorry that my choice of language has offended some people in the UK and Europe and caused concern. But it's important to raise the issue of controlled and well-managed immigration that supports economic growth. The Manchester United co-owner is one of Britain's richest men, with a net worth of £17 billion. In 2020, he moved his primary residence to the tax haven of Monaco." Sir Keir Starmer's spokesman said it was right that Sir Jim had apologised for his offensive and wrong comments. Other cabinet ministers joined in the backlash.
What Jim Ratcliffe said was unacceptable. It was disgusting, frankly.
The Prime Minister's right. A lot of people would have found that language offensive, wrong.
The Greater Manchester Mayor, Andy Burnham, said Sir Jim's comments were inaccurate, insulting and inflammatory. There was also condemnation from the world of football. The Football Association said it was looking into the comments. Sir Jim's own club, Manchester United, said it prides itself on being inclusive and welcoming, with a diverse group of players and staff and a global community of supporters. And on the streets of Manchester...
I'm an immigrant myself. I've been here for over 20 years and I think everyone has a part in the community.
I think he should live in the UK and pay his taxes. End of. Otherwise, he should have his knighthood stripped off him.
Manchester is built on immigrants, right? From the Irish to, we've had everyone. It seems a really weird thing to say.
Sir Jim remains defiant, but critics claim his outburst was an own goal. John Craig, Sky News.
It was, until tonight, a bedrock American scientific finding. Greenhouse gases endanger human health by warming our planet. Well, in the past couple of hours, that was erased by President Trump in his most sweeping action yet to reverse U.S. action on climate change.
Effective immediately, we're repealing the ridiculous endangerment finding and terminating all additional green emission standards imposed unnecessarily on vehicle models and engines between 2012 and 2027 and beyond. This action will save American consumers trillions of dollars.
Well, our climate reporter, Victoria Seabrook, is here. Victoria, good to see you. Donald Trump has tried to reverse climate policies since he got into power, even the time before. So what's different now?
Yeah, as you say, this comes after a string of rollbacks during his administration. This one, as you said, it's the bedrock, it's the linchpin for so many other climate rules in the US. So if you want to gut those, this is like the Achilles heel. This is the one that you go for, because that finding that it endangers human health basically justifies then bringing in limits on the sources of that type of pollution, so power plants, but in particular vehicles and transport in America. It's the biggest source of pollution, not just in terms of driving climate change, but air pollution as well. Now, Donald Trump, the big driver for this is to try to bring down costs, and that's what he's been trying to do so much with his fossil fuel policies as well as with this. He says it will save people, well, save car makers about $2,500 per car because it's lifting emissions standards. But environmentalists dispute that because they say, well, if cars are less efficient, you're going to need more fuel to power them. And there's lots of back and forth about the numbers, about whether this is going to net benefit or net cost the US economy, because also the knock-on impact on climate change, extreme weather, insurance, homes becoming harder to insure, all of that sort of thing. So it affects US citizens, but this sort of thing ripples around the world as well, both in terms of climate change itself, but also, as we've seen with other things, because it's the biggest economy in the world, the second biggest polluter, what it does, it kind of gives cover for other countries to do that as well. But, I mean, you could look at it and say, well, car makers in America, if they follow this, they're going to be going in the other direction to a lot of the big other markets, Europe and China, trying to get greener, could make them less competitive. This will be challenged in court, so we'll see how that plays out. But in America, you always see this yo-yo on climate policy between the Democrats and the Republicans. But if this goes through, what it will do is it will make it much harder for the Democrats to bring back in something like this in future.
It'll be interesting to see how it develops in the States and, of course, the impact it might have internationally. Victoria Seabrook, thank you. Now, the US delivered a message to NATO allies today. We're not abandoning Europe, but you need to take primary responsibility for defending yourselves. That came from the US Undersecretary for Defense, Elbridge Colby. His boss, Pete Hegseth, missed the meeting of defense ministers in Brussels. Well, our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, is there for us. And it was about a year ago, wasn't it, Deborah, that actually Pete Hegseth, the US, basically told Europe they needed to start taking care of themselves a little bit more. And now Pete Hegseth hasn't even shown up.
Yes, he dropped a sort of proverbial bombshell on the defence ministerial literally a year ago, almost to the day, sending tremors through the alliance as he relayed Donald Trump's America First policy, which very much means NATO in the background. And it prompted this huge scramble by NATO allies, led by Mark Rutte, the Secretary-General, to rally together and really try and demonstrate to the US president that NATO is hugely important, not just to European security, but also to North American security, the transatlantic alliance. And then you had a big summit in The Hague last year where they all stepped up and agreed to massively increase defence spending over the next few years. But what we had today, yes, you're right, Pete Hegseth wasn't here. And of course, the allies were trying to play that down, but clearly the optics aren't great. But his deputy, Elbridge Colby, came and delivered this very strong message about how, yes, the US isn't abandoning NATO, but the US is putting America first. And at a time when, in his words, military hard power and the use of force is increasing across the world, he talked about the potential for there to be multiple crises at once, and maybe the Americans would be distracted somewhere else. And, of course, Europe would then have to take the lead in its own defences. And I actually then asked Mark Rutte afterwards what that actually means in terms of European leadership when it comes to NATO defence. The German defence minister, when he arrived this morning, he said that for NATO to remain transatlantic, it needs to become more European. Can you give a sense of what that actually means? So can you just give it that sense? It'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Boris Pistorius is right. We need a NATO which is more European-led. And how does that work out? It means Europeans spending more, taking more responsibility for their own defense. It is one of the biggest and richest parts of the world. The collective GDP of Europe, not only the European Union, but including Norway and including Turkey and including the United Kingdom and other countries not in the European Union, and of course the European Union nations also in NATO, that collective GDP is massive. So of course we are able to take more care of our own defense. The problem is we didn't.
Now, at these ministerials, honestly, the American Defence Secretary or Foreign Secretary or President, when he's here, is like the main event, the main act, the person that everyone wants to speak to. But on this occasion, given that Pete Hegseth wasn't here and his deputy was, it was also notable that he didn't do any press conference either. Instead, we had some remarks that were made by him at the beginning of this ministerial, where he really sets out the US perspective and he talks about NATO. He calls it NATO 1.0 when it sort of was originally conceived back in at the end of the Second World War, and saying that he wants NATO to go back to its roots, which was all about credible hard military power, and he described that as NATO 3.0, and you can hear what he had to say.
I think we have a really strong basis for working together in partnership, but putting NATO kind of a 3.0 NATO that's based a partnership rather than dependency, and really a return to what NATO was originally intended for.
Now, we've got the Munich Security Conference coming up over the next 3 days, where you're going to have, again, world leaders, including Keir Starmer for the UK, meeting in Munich. And you can expect to hear a lot of noise and talk about commitments by the European leaders to ramping up defence spending and spending on security. But the key will be in the actual action. And that is also what the Americans were saying here today. It's not just about what you put into your military budget. It's what you get out of it. And alarm bells really should be ringing in capitals, including London, who talk a lot. They talk a good game in terms of what they're doing to respond to Donald Trump's demands that European countries get serious about defence. But actually, when you look at the action and the timescale for that action, for the UK, many insiders say it's far too slow.
Deborah Haynes with the latest from that NATO meeting in Brussels. Deborah, thank you. Well, Ukraine at the heart of the NATO gathering today, and one of their country's athletes has taken centre stage at the Winter Olympics in Italy. Vladislav Eraskevich has been banned from competing for insisting on wearing a helmet, paying tribute to athletes killed since Russia's invasion. The 27-year-old skeleton racer couldn't reach an agreement with the International Olympic Committee, which has strict rules around political statements.
To be honest, some athletes was talking to me about my helmet, and from my perspective, from my discussions, I didn't saw that athletes from skeleton sport who was participating with me in the venues was against this helmet in any way. So it wasn't, they wasn't feeling that this helmet overshadowing them. They think it's beautiful tribute, and it should be allowed. But yeah, I don't think it was the right decision in the first place to address and to not allow us to use this helmet. During last days, I think I just proved this point for myself.
We cannot have athletes having pressure put on them by their political masters to make messaging during the competition. So it's a protection. If everyone is allowed to express themselves in that way, beyond a black armband, it will create a field of play which becomes a field of expression. And even where one may or may not agree with the sentiments, you can see where that would lead to a chaotic situation. One of the issues in this case is that it was the clear intention of him to do it. We asked him not to do it. We gave him alternatives, which I'll come to in a minute, and he still carried on.
Well, Ukraine's president said the banning disgraced the Olympic movement. And tonight he bestowed Ukraine's Order of Freedom on Eraskevich.
The decision of the International Olympic Committee against Vladislav Eraskevich, our athlete who simply remembers and honours Ukrainian athletes whose lives were taken by Russian strikes, is definitely not about peace, not about justice, and not about the principles of the Olympic movement. Sport must not be devoid of memory and respect. I have signed the decree awarding Vladislav the Order of Freedom, and I thank him for his principled stance.
Well, let's speak now to Nadia Vasina, a friend of Vladislav and a Ukrainian former international athlete. Thank you so much for joining us here on The World. First of all, your reaction to this decision by the IOC to ban him.
Hi, Barbara. Thank you very much for having me on your show and for letting us to talk about such extremely important things. Well, actually, I was very surprised because when I saw that the International Olympic Committee let American athlete and to express his emotions with a picture of his relatives who passed away. Then I saw the picture of a natural Russian athlete. He was performing in a costume of Soviet Union Russian military style. And he was allowed to perform. And then Vladislav came with this helmet, with the pictures of people. Some of them I know because I am the ambassador of Ukrainian national project, Athletes, Angels of Sport. I'm telling the stories about each athlete who were killed in this horrible war, who were killed being at home or at the sport arena. So I was shocked because I saw that Kirsty Coventry and Mark Adams, the top management of Olympic Committee, will be on the right side, will be on the side of freedom, will be on the side of honesty, will be with Ukraine. Like lots of people are standing with Ukraine, but they choose to stand on the opposite way. They choose to support, to let Russian athletes to perform in Soviet Union military style costume and didn't let Vladislav perform.
Let me just, I mean, you mentioned Kirsty Coventry there, the president of the IOC. She spoke earlier today. She was visibly emotional about the decision, and she said that she spoke to Vladislav as an athlete, not just as the president of the IOC. Her point, though, is that it breaks the guidelines. Those guidelines are there for the athletes to be able to express themselves, and I guess the IOC decides where that expression is allowed, but also to keep them safe. I appreciate you don't like the decision that they came to, but do you understand their reasoning for reaching it?
Okay, another question. Why they let Italian athlete to perform with Russian flag on his helmet?
So on that, if forgive me just again, if you mean Roland Fischnatter, I think the reason that was given is that he had national flags of all the host nations of the 7 Winter Olympics that he participated in, and one was obviously Sochi 2014. So for that specific case, I guess it's the IOC that decides, though, and I'm just wondering whether you agree with the principle that they have that actually politics shouldn't really mix with sports.
Well, being an athlete for so many years, I do understand. I've been performing in the World Championships and I have world awards, and I do understand, of course. But they said very truly, Mark Adams said, we want to have rules the same for everybody. Okay, so don't let any other athletes to show, to express their emotions on the competitions. So again, American athletes should not perform with the picture of his parents. For example, there are other athletes who were also sharing about Israel athlete. He also were sharing the memories about his killed people in Munich. Why not? Why they let them do that?
Forgive me for interrupting. The IOC gave Vladislav Heraskovic the option of wearing a black armband, because what Vladislav is trying to do is to basically depict, well, on the helmet, it was a depiction of Ukrainian athletes that have been killed since Russia's invasion. So why do you think the black armband could not still have shown his commitment and his desire to remember them?
Very easy, because again, on examples, let's talk. For example, if they would say to Russian neutral athlete, and I want to remind that lots of Russian athletes are in the army, in the Russian army. So why they did not tell him, okay, you can take your costume on a press conference, you can take your costume on a photo shoot, but don't perform on it. Okay, if everybody have the same rules, let's have the same rules. But we see that there is one rule, but it's different depends from who is from which country.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, the IOC would say, you know, those are all individual cases, and I'm sure that they were argued individually. But let me just end with something that Vladislav Heraskovic said, that the ban is the price to pay for our dignity. Now, obviously, he wasn't able to compete, which, considering that, I mean, you will know as an athlete, the kind of effort that goes into preparing for the Olympics is enormous. But I suppose he managed to raise the world view around the issues of these athletes killed since the invasion, since Russia's invasion. What do you make of his line that ban is the price to pay for our dignity?
Well, honestly, I think he shake the whole world, not just the sport world, because really people we are going through hell. I've been on the front line since 2014, performing for soldiers and for civilians, and the price we're paying is horrible. Well, honestly, it's difficult to express how we live. Just this night, before he had to perform, we had very heavy ballistic missile attack on the city, on capital, on Kiev. It's 4.5 million people are living here, and I just woke up in my apartment. I live on the 22nd floor in the downtown because my house was shaking. So of course Vladislav wanted to show that Olympic Committee should be on the bright side, and he honestly, let's be honest, he did not break any rule. He didn't come with the pictures of the presidents, of politics, or some crime people, I don't know. He just showed the pictures of some of his also friends, of some people who I've been on the arena, some people who were on Olympics. So I'm sure he did not broke any rules, and right now they have the lawyers, and they will go through, I think, custody and everything to figure out what to do with this. Because we Ukrainians, we want peace and freedom. We fight for freedom every day for 12 years. And we're very thankful for all people who support us, to you, Barbara, to all your team, that we can talk about it and express our feelings, because we want to live in a free country, happy, and not being scared that probably tomorrow we're not going to wake up.
Nadia Vasina, former Ukrainian international athlete and a friend of Vladislav Heraskovic. Nadia, thank you so much for sharing your views with us.
Thank you. God bless you.
You're watching The World with me, Barbara Serra. Coming up, millions cast their votes in Bangladesh's first elections since the 2024 uprising that ousted a longtime ruler.
Well, hello, and thank you for watching The Wrap. Every night of the week, we will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why.
Just cannot stand.
Stupid thing to do.
He did know what he was doing.
You can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable? What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree. And laughs along the way. Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
This is The World on Sky News. We continue to sift through millions of documents, images and videos from the Epstein files released by the US Justice Department. And we've now uncovered fragmented footage that the late paedophile probably thought the world would never see. The videos were captured, it appears, by secret hidden cameras. Our international correspondent, John Sparks, has the details.
Buried within the Epstein files released by the US Department of Justice, there are more than 1,000 fragmented videos that our team has been reviewing. They were recorded here in the sexual predator's office, tucked within his home in Palm Beach, Florida. You can see the well-appointed room here, his desk topped with framed photographs, the shelves lined with books. Now, it appears that Epstein had a miniature camera or cameras in this room. We found an email exchange written in 2014. Epstein writes an email instructing a member of staff to buy a couple of these covert cameras. Let's get 3 motion-detected hidden cameras that record thanks, he writes. 5 hours later, he gets a reply. Jeffrey, I already, too, purchased the motion sensor camera from the Spy Store in Fort Lauderdale. I charged them last night and figuring out how to work them as we speak. I'm installing them into Kleenex boxes now. Right, we're going to show you several sequences that appear to have been captured by a surveillance camera in this room. We see the desk, the shelves, and a figure who appears to be Jeffrey Epstein here, wearing a black shirt. There's a woman in shorts propped up on the desk. 2 more women join them, and we see them orbiting around the room. And I should say that we've blurred their faces to protect their identities. In another set of images, a woman in dark trousers enters the office. Another appears at his side and then kneels down before him. We know from police documents that victims feared they were being secretly recorded by Epstein, and these images, analysed by our team, suggest that was the case. And they also offer a rare glimpse of what his life was like.
Bangladesh has held its first election since the youth-led uprising in 2024 that threw out the South Asian country's longtime ruler, Sheikh Hasina. There are 127 million voters, 300 seats, and 3 possible outcomes. What's certain is that there's no place for the ousted Prime Minister's Awami League party, which was banned from running.
This vote is very important for Bangladesh, especially to elect a representative. We want to elect the right representative.
There should be development. Something good should happen, and the earlier laws should be changed so that no government can be autocratic.
I think it's very crucial because this is the first time we can show our opinion with freedom.
We are going to give a vote after 17 years because before it was not fair and free.
It is a turning point, and we are waiting for that point, inshallah. People's demand change, they desire change, we also desire the change.
I have cast my first vote in my life. I voted peacefully and without any disruption. I urge the people to come to the polling centres and cast your votes freely, fearlessly, and in a festive atmosphere.
Well, it's been a bumpy road since the mass protests that forced Sheikh Hasina into exile in neighbouring India. Still, the election could reshape Bangladesh, where entrenched political parties, military coups, and allegations of vote rigging have dominated since its independence in 1971. Well, let's get more now with Dr. Kshitij Bajpai, a Senior Research Fellow for South Asia at Chatham House's Asia-Pacific Programme. Sir, thank you so much for joining us here on The World. As we were hearing, very crucial elections, both whether they'll be seen to be free and fair, who wins, and the changes that they bring about to Bangladesh. What do you think are the main points that we should be looking for?
Well, I mean, in terms of the election itself, I think there are several key issues that the new government will need to focus on. I think one is the willingness and ability of the new government to follow through with the reform agenda. This means implementing proposed reforms of what's referred to as the July National Charter. This includes the creation of a new upper house of parliament, term limits for the prime minister, the president having oversight over the prime minister, and among other measures, plus broader social and economic reforms such as addressing corruption and reviving the economy. A second issue is movement towards a genuine national reconciliation, which would entail some sort of rehabilitation of the Awami League. This is the party of the ousted Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina. The other issue, I think, is the treatment of women and minorities in the country, as we've seen the country essentially slide to the right in some ways. And then finally, I think there's the issue of resetting relations with India, which have deteriorated significantly since the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was ousted back in 2024.
Like you mentioned, the Awami party, the one led by Sheikh Hasina, has been banned. So the main runners, the main contenders, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and then Jamaat-e-Islami, which is the nation's largest Islamist party, which I believe was actually banned under Sheikh Hasina. But they are sort of working in an alliance with the Gen Z movement, which actually brought about these elections and the uprising in 2024. So how do you see the various alliances shaping up?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the monsoon or so-called monsoon revolution in 2024 was framed as a second liberation for the country. It was aimed at breaking free of this era when power would sway, often violently, between the Awami League and the BNP. The head of the current interim government, Mohammed Yunus, has proclaimed that this is a new Bangladesh has begun. But, you know, I think there is a underlying risk of a return to business as usual, given that BNP and Jamaat, the two leading contenders, are both long-established parties, and they're in a stronger position than newer parties such as the NCP, which is the student-led party which emerged from the 2024 revolution. I think it does raise questions about how likely we are to see a fresh start for the country, or if it will be just a return to the politics of protests that has so often plagued the country. And just adding to that is, as I said, is this question of rehabilitating the Awami League. There's been no real movement towards national reconciliation, and there's a concern with that we could see a return to this cycle of revenge politics that has so often plagued the country.
But so do you think that we might see a real change in the way that Bangladeshi politics are run?
Well, I mean, as of now, I think people are generally quite hopeful. There's been a sense of excitement, anticipation, a festive spirit almost to some degree surrounding the polls, a renewed sense of national pride. I think in some ways that also speaks to a broader question on the state of democracy in South Asia more broadly. I mean, these are countries where democracy is far from perfect, but they're generally more robust than perceived. I mean, the region accounts for almost half the world's population living in a democracy, and you have almost just over 4.5 million first-time voters. So I think people are cautiously optimistic that the country is headed in a better direction. So I think, and I think that, yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, forgive me for interrupting. Just we have time for one last question. I think this is the first time that Bangladeshis living abroad can actually vote in the election through postal voting. So it's quite a big expatriate population. How do you think that might impact the election? Do you think they're likely to vote as a bloc one way or another, or is it just impossible to tell?
Well, I don't think they would vote as a bloc. I think it is quite evenly split. I mean, when interacting with Bangladeshi communities here in the UK, it's quite clear that there are some that are still highly supportive of the Awami League, the former party of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and also of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. So I think that there is quite an even split. But I think the one thing that everyone does agree on is that they are hopeful as the country reverts back to democratic rule after 18 months. They're hopeful that this will be the first time that you have a government that is not led by the Awami League since 2009. So I think in that context, and they're also hopeful in terms of some of these proposed reforms that are in the July National Charter. So I think, yeah, the country is headed into uncharted territory, but I think the population, both within Bangladesh and among the diaspora community, are cautiously optimistic of its future.
Yeah. Well, we are expecting results sometime tomorrow, so I guess there'll be more clarity then. For now, Dr. Shijij Bajpayee from Chatham House. Sir, thank you.
Thank you.
You're watching The World. Coming up next, after drawing down immigration enforcement in Minnesota, the crackdown comes to an end.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Let's go back to the US now, where the Trump administration says it is ending its massive immigration crackdown in Minnesota after weeks of angry mass protests, thousands of arrests, and 2 fatal shootings.
I have proposed, and President Trump has concurred, that this surge operation conclude. A significant drawdown has already been underway this week and will continue to the next week. Federal government personnel assigned to conduct criminal investigation into the agitators, as well as the personnel assigned here for the fraud investigations, will remain in place until their work is done. I will also remain on the ground for a little longer to oversee the drawdown of this operation and ensure its success.
Well, our U.S. correspondent James Matthews joins us now from Washington. James, the administration also said that Minnesota is now less of a sanctuary state for criminals. That's one of the reasons why they're pulling back. How much is it that, and how much has it been the controversy over the 2 killings?
Yeah, hi, Barbara. I think it's got U-turn written all over it myself. It is the end of a most controversial episode, clearly. This Operation Metro Surge, as they called it. It sent hundreds of ICE agents into Minneapolis and to the state of Minnesota, now coming to an end. Tom Homan was saying there that there'll be a withdrawal extending through next week, agents being redeployed, although clearly they won't disappear. They are still there. There is still that dark shadow cast across the Minneapolis community, many of whom have been in hiding, and you wonder when they will find it safe enough to come out. You know, some schools reporting 50% absentee rates and so on. He said, Homan, that they'd made 4,000 arrests in Minnesota as part of this deportation program. But of course, the figure that stands out, Barbara, is 2. The 2 Americans, Renee Good and Alex Pretty, who were shot and killed by ICE agents. They were the fatalities at the heart of the scenes of protest and of violence that have come to define Trump's immigration policy and actually have come to harm him politically. The polls say as much. This latest move has been welcomed by the Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry. In a statement, he said this: "They thought they could break us, but a love for our neighbours and a resolve to endure can outlast an occupation." He went on, "These patriots of Minneapolis are showing that it's not just about resistance. Standing with our neighbours is deeply American. This operation has been catastrophic for our neighbours and businesses, and now it's time for a great comeback." He goes on to say, "We will show the same commitment to our immigrant residents and endurance in this reopening, and I'm hopeful the whole country will stand with us as we move forward together." So there you go, Barbara. It draws a line of sorts under events in Minnesota, but that's not to say the issue of deportations, that fear and distrust has gone away.
James Matthews with the latest on that from Washington. James, as always, thank you. You're watching The World with me, Barbara Serra. Coming up next, the man behind a secretly recorded documentary that's earned him an Oscar nomination.
There's a fresh look to your news from 10 on Sky News. It's a new show called The Wrap, every night of the week. We'll still bring you the day's biggest stories, but with more lively debate, more in-depth commentary, and more of what you need to know. Plus a look at what's making tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10 on Sky News.
Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. President, what will you say next to Benjamin Netanyahu? In June 2009, did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent. I've interviewed some of America's most recognisable politicians. Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting.
Mr Walker, you're anti-abortion, but 2 women say that you paid for their abortions. Are you a hypocrite, sir?
Connor, what did you say to the President? What did you say?
We had a great meeting. He was a great man.
I'm David Blevins, one of Sky's US correspondents based in Washington, D.C.
David Blevins from Sky News. Fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that?
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here.
Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism?
I just want to understand why you do not think that guns are the problem.
Why is this just an American problem?
The anger too, and the division.
Where are you from?
From Sky News, UK.
Yeah.
Back up.
Mr Navarro, can
Well, I'm allowed to ask questions, aren't I?
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding, Mr. Musk. Has your ego and ignorance, sir, cost Ukrainian lives?
David Cameron needs to worry about his own country, and frankly, he can kiss my ass.
Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody?
Free wherever you get your news.
What words do you have for Harry Dunn's family today?
Have a nice day.
Do you fear a fourth indictment?
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to. Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
What happens when regime propaganda begins being taught at a school where you work? Well, it was this situation which prompted a videographer working at his local school to begin documenting Putin's classroom indoctrination. The now Oscar-nominated Dr.
On the 14th of March of the same year, the war with Ukraine began, we started to receive letters from the Ministry of Education of the Russian Federation on what changes needed to be introduced. These were letters, these were orders which contained lessons with directions to teachers on what to say and how to present things. So fully prepared presentations, fully prepared video materials, and also video materials that we were to put on for the students during the lessons.
So what impact did you see that all of that material was having on the children themselves?
Children believe propaganda, and you can't escape it. People who are a bit older, they can resist this, but the younger generation, they can't resist. But I can give you an example of when this propaganda does not work at all. This is when parents talk to their children at home, and they say, try not to listen to what the teachers are going to tell you. Maybe look out the window, think about something else. And ultimately, these children are the ones who have immunity against propaganda. Otherwise, if parents do not talk to their children on these subjects at home, then they can't resist this. It sounds absurd because parents are telling their children, they're sending their children to school and they're telling them not to listen to what the teacher is going to tell them. That sounds funny.
Your job within the school, one of them, was to actually document with a video camera a lot of the events around school. And so because of that, you ended up filming quite a lot of this. But at least in the documentary, it's obvious you don't agree. And it seems like some people at schools also thought you obviously didn't agree with the propaganda. I'm wondering if at one point you felt the attitude towards you shift, whether people started seeing you as a potential threat, even as a traitor?
So one day, director of studies called me and they said that now you'll have to record all of this and we will have to send reports to the Ministry of Education. And after filming the first lesson, I realized that I have no moral right to delete this material because this will be documenting the reality of this age for the future generations. And I remember what she said at the first lesson. She said, guys, our countries, Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, have got the same culture. We have the same heroes, same songs, the same language. However, Ukraine stepped on the path of neo-Nazism and we have to liberate them from this. And some teachers obviously disagree, but they have to follow this. And there's a scene in the film where one of the teachers is not even able to pronounce these words, denazification and demilitarization. And then they phoned me and they said, why did you include that footage into the video? Because you shamed the profession of the teacher, because teachers should be able to say those words out loud. And so there is this scene in the film where that teacher is standing there like a hostage. She studied to be a teacher. She is now working and receiving a small salary. And in addition to all of this, she now has to say all these things.
You mentioned in the documentary that you love Russia. So how difficult was the decision to leave, to make? And also, how often do you think about the children that you've left behind, who, probably not children anymore? And do you know what the impact has been on your film? Do you know how they've reacted to it?
So there was a big team working on producing this film, and they were very careful watching every frame of the film in order to avoid any consequences for children who were in the film. But after the film, some security officers, FSB officers, came to the school and they gathered everyone together and they told them that there was no such teacher here, there was no such film being made, forget all of this and never discuss it with anyone. So the name of the film foretold the future.
Just on a final point, you're nominated for an Oscar and many other awards, but what do you hope that this film will achieve?
It's very important for me for this film to be seen in Russia, seen internationally. And unfortunately, this film is very current for many other countries today, too. I went to New York and I was walking down the streets and I saw some news line on a screen. And what I noticed is that the war is always written with the capital W and peace is written with a small letter. And so that's something that you see all the time. And some American teachers wrote to me too after watching the movie. They said that we have similar things beginning in the US. It's very easy not to notice when fascism comes to your door. But when it's inside, when it's in your room, it's too late to notice it. It's already there.
Pavel Talenkin talking to me a little bit earlier, the co-director of the Oscar-nominated Mr. Nobody Against Putin. That's it for The World for tonight and this week. Stay with us. Coming up next, it's Gillian Joseph with The Wrap. Thanks for watching.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.